Hello everybody and welcome back to another video on the artist philosophy and how you can improve the clarity and creativity of your work. Today I'd like to talk about how ineffective learning methods slow your artistic success. I'm actually dealing with this problem directly with some piano pieces that I would like to compose. I have a vision in my head for the style of these pieces are going to be, but in order for me to compose these pieces, I need to learn musical notation, which is a skill I have not mastered yet. And so this is a situation where my lack of skill in a certain area prevents me from instantiating my artistic vision into reality. And so how do we rectify this problem? Well, skills are things that we learn through practice. I learned this when I was 9 years old. I remember I was learning a difficult piano sonatina for a piano competition. I remember being excited to show my teacher this piece I was learning, and I walked in there and played it for her, and then I'll never forget what she said right after. She said, "Good, now you need to go practice it 100 times a day." And for a 9-year-old, that sounds ridiculous, right? So I just thought she was joking. But it turns out that she was dead serious. I kind of was shocked by this experience, but I went home and although I didn't actually practice it 100 times a day, I practiced it way more than I usually would have practiced this piece. I ended up getting third place in that piano competition, which was my very first time placing in a competition. This is just a great story about how repetition and practice can lead to mastery of the skills that you need, right? And in this case, I needed some skills for my piano competition, but the same applies for us as artists. When we need to learn a new skill, sometimes we just need to put in the hard work and the repetitions in order to learn it. However, another problem arises from this, which is if you go look at other artists today, you'll see that there are some artists that are markedly more capable of doing things than other artists. There's definitely a large hierarchy of skill and ability. The question that I'm interested in as an artist, as somebody who's interested in mastery, is how do the people at the very top of these hierarchies master these skills so quickly? What practice methods are they using to be able to get where they are in their lifetime, right? Because there's some people who, even my age, 20 years old, there's artists that I look around me that are my age that are doing things that I'm 100% sure that I'm not capable of doing. Today I want to discuss some of those effective practice methods that we can implement in order to grow more rapidly as an artist. And so I'm going to use another experience from my piano days. Back when I was about 17 years old, I was entering in the last piano competitions that I was ever going to enter into. I wanted to go out with a bang, and so I started learning this very difficult Chopin etude. I knew that in this case, I wouldn't be able to practice in my old ways because they were too slow, and I knew that the other pianists that I was going to be competing with were also on the grind, practicing for hours and hours every single day. I was going to see if there were any methods that I could practice a lot more effectively given a much smaller amount of time, because I wasn't one of those pianists who liked to practice for hours and hours every day, although there were some days that I did that. Most of the time, I practiced for about 15 minutes to 20 minutes a day. And so I wanted to figure out how I could use those 15 minutes in the most effective way possible. And so I started doing some research and I found some principles that I applied. And here are the principles essentially that I applied during that year in preparation for those piano competitions. So first, I'd identify my points of friction. Points of friction are sections of the piece that you struggle with. So I would play through the entire piece, and then I would look back on everything that I'd play through. Sometimes I would record myself, which is a really good thing to do, and I would find the places that I struggled the most. Once I identified those points of friction, the next thing I would do is I would narrow those points of friction down to the simplest problem possible. So if it's just one measure, I would only practice the right hand of that measure until I had it mastered. I would practice it extremely slow, and I would use some other learning techniques like jumping around to different pieces to sort of empty out my short-term memory and to try to get the routine that I was practicing to lodge into my long-term memory so that it was a permanent skill that I wouldn't have to come back to and re-practice later. So what I was doing here is the second step, which is breaking the problem down into micro-level skills, mastering those micro-level skills individually, and sequencing them back together into a larger whole. And then what I would do is, with this larger whole, I would sort of review this. I would practice in the morning and sequence this together into a larger whole, and then the evening before, I would review what I had practiced again to make sure that it did indeed lodge into my long-term memory as opposed to my short-term memory. The other thing that I did a lot is I would listen to lots of recordings of other pianists playing the same piece. And what I was doing is I was using my attention very carefully to wash over all the things that these pianists were doing, and I was learning from them by mimicking them. After applying all these principles to my practice session, I ended up placing first in my local piano festival, and then I managed to get a second place at Weber State University, which is the highest I've ever placed on a piano competition. So I can attest to the fact that these principles do indeed work, and they've helped me tremendously, not just in piano, but in all of my artistic endeavors. One of the things that I did as well is I looked up a piece that I wanted to mimic, and then I tried to mimic just a small slice, the very beginning of that musical piece, as closely as I could manage inside of Sunbox. And doing that, I gained a few new skills about how to replicate sound and about how to create some sounds that I'd never created before, which gave me something to build off of on my original compositions later. Putting all these habits together into a daily ritual will accelerate your growth, and it will give you the trajectory of a prospective master rather than that of a future amateur. You can read this post in blog format in the link in the description, and I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my Substack account to receive weekly blog posts on the subject of creativity and the artist's philosophy. I've now created a Caleb Creates Discord group where we can discuss a lot of these principles and the artist's philosophy and share work and receive feedback. So be sure to join the community in the link in the description so that you can receive feedback on your work, and maybe if you're feeling a lack of inspiration one day, be useful to have some people to reach out to on those days that you're feeling less inspired, and maybe you can get a little bit of inspiration for that day. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Be sure to give me a like, subscribe, hit the bell, and comment. Share this video with your artist friends. If they are feeling a lack of inspiration, maybe they can get some encouragement out of this video. I hope to see you guys in the next one.